These newspaper article readings are not for the faint-hearted or the squeamish. If you're at all sensitive, I might suggest these aren't for you. If in doubt, check the description below. It'll tell you which topics are covered in this particular episode. There's both human and animal suicides, and you heard that right. There's also horrific descriptions of injuries, as well as the deaths of youngsters. So don't do it to yourself if you're prone to nightmares, is all I'll say right now. Not all the articles are horrible. Some of them are uplifting, some of them show incredible bravery and heroism. There are near misses. So these were picked as showing life prior to health and safety, as well as for the crazy and curious details some contain, with other miscellaneous happenings that kind of struck me enough to post the articles to Twitter, despite not having too much relevance to Scotland necessarily. These are worldwide topics, and they didn't have any real connection to the projects I was working on and researching at the time. I just happened to have come across them by the way, kind of thing. So we'll get into them, shall we? What we're going to do here is we're going to do a lucky dip of newspaper articles to really mix them up a wee bit, because while I'm doing the researches, I'm obviously coming up with the same kind of terms and things. So we'll mix them up even further. So to that end, I have all of the newspaper titles and dates of the articles. What has the hat got for us today? Let's find out, shall we? We'll take this one, which is the Dundee Evening Telegraph for the 15th of August, 1905. Find out what devastating news this has for us. Okay, on the outset, and from the title, we may expect this to be a fairly positive article. We'll see, shall we? Expresses narrow escape. Dashing on without a driver. A thrilling New York story. From New York, Monday. Owing to the tragic death of the engine driver, the fast-flying Virginian Express full of holidaymakers just escaped a terrible disaster. The driver was accidentally killed by a post while looking out from his cab to examine a piece of machinery, and in the meantime the fireman, his only companion, was busily engaged at the rear of the tender digging out coal. At that time the express was going at top speed and just passing a danger signal. Shortly after the accident, the fireman noticed the locomotive rocking and shaking viciously, and, knowing the train to be in advance of its time, could not understand the reason for the excessive speed, but the engineer was reputed to be one of the most careful and skillful men on the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad, so that fireman paid no special attention until a second danger signal was passed, and then a third, when he called out, "For God's sake, Jack, slow down, we are running to hell." Receiving no answer, and the full speed being maintained, the fireman immediately left his work on the tender, and springing into the engine cab, saw the engineer dead with his crushed head hanging out of the window. The fireman grasped the air brake lever and the engine throttle, bringing the locomotive to a stop just before a network of switches and side tracks near Philadelphia was reached. Neither the passengers nor the guard of the train knew anything of the danger they had run until the arrival at Germantown Junction, where a new driver was secured. And that's from the Daily Telegraph, as reported in the Dundee Evening Telegraph for the 15th of August, 1905. That's crazy. God, that poor fireman, to find his colleague like that. Poor driver. was supposed to be one of the most careful and skillful. I'm sure he'd have known the danger of sticking his head out the window, but these trains weren't set up so that there was really any other way. That was an issue on the British lines, was that there weren't gauges in the driver's compartment to tell them what was going on with the train. So they'd have to poke their head out and look, and it was just so dangerous. And well, there we go, we see why it was so dangerous. So, well, that's an interesting start to this episode. We'll see what else it has in store for us. We'll go for this one. This is the Orkney Herald and Weekly Advertiser and Gazette for the Orkney and Zetland Islands for the 5th of July 1905. Zetland was just Shetland Islands. Okay, so this gives us accident at Kirkwall Pier. On the arrival of the St. Ronvald at Kirkwall on Saturday afternoon, a cooper who was on the way to Shetland and attempting to board the steamer before she was properly moored fell into the water between the pier and the steamer. Constable Wood, who was on duty at the pier at the time, immediately jumped on board the steamer, getting down to the water. Placing one foot on the belting of the steamer and the other on the brander of the pier, he managed to get hold of the man in the water, but his feet slipping owing to the movement of the steamer, he also fell into the water and, in falling, badly dislocated his shoulder. A rope was thrown to the man, but he failed to get hold of it. The constable, however, seized the rope in his teeth, and keeping hold of the man, they were both rescued by those on board the steamer, assisted by others who had boarded the steamer from the shore. While in the water, both the constable and the man were in danger of being crushed between the steamer and the pier. Captain Angus, however, ordered the engines to be reversed, and the ship's head fell away from the pier. Constable Wood, although still suffering a good deal of pain, is progressing favourably, while the other man appeared to be none the worse of his ducking. The accident caused considerable excitement at the pier, which was crowded. And that's from the Orkney Herald and Weekly Advertiser and Gazette for the Orkney and Zetland Islands, 5th of July 1905. On your cell, Constable Wood. He dislocates a shoulder, so he grabs the rope with his teeth. The other man can't even do that for himself. He can't even grab the rope for himself. The constable, with a dislocated shoulder, grabs the rope with his teeth. That's just... Constable Wood is a hero in that story. Yeah, I like that one. Yeah, on himself. Right, next one. The Dundee Evening Post for the 1st of November 1900. Okay, this is a sad story. It's entitled Unconscious for 20 Years. For the past 20 years, the sad case of the brakesman Dietrich has been a standing subject for discussion among German doctors. Dietrich suffered grave injuries in a railway accident, lost consciousness, and never regained it. The railway company pensioned his wife, and for the whole of these 20 years she has lived in a cottage with her young daughter, watching over her ever-sleeping husband. The neighbours, strangely jealous of this unfortunate woman, have for years put about the rumour that Dietrich was not asleep, that he was in perfect health, and was duping the railway company into maintaining him and his family in idleness. Sudden incursions were made into the cottage at all hours of the day and night, but Dietrich was always immovable in his bed, his wife sewing by his side. But the continual slanders have had a startling result. Madame Dietrich has murdered her husband and hanged herself in utter weariness of such a life. And that's from the Dundee Evening Post for the 1st of November 1900. Now, when I posted this to Twitter, there were some people who were on the side of the neighbours in this one, and who believed that, yes, he was obviously conning the company, they were obviously duping his employers, because how can a man in a coma in 1900, well, from 1880, I guess, have survived until 1900, 20 years in a coma? How can he have eaten and drank? How was he sustained while in a coma without the use of intravenous nutrition, like you might get in a hospital if you're comatose? I believe he was in a coma. I believe that this story is just as sad as it sounds, that in 20 years they hadn't caught him anything other than passed out in bed, would say as much. People are like, on the issue of feeding him, I mean, he may have been comatose, but his reflexes might still have been on the go. So if you've got anyone with pets that have been particularly ill, where you've had to feed them or get them to swallow pills and things, you just put it in towards the back of the throat and then rub the throat, and it makes them swallow. And she may have got into a routine like that, just to have him eat maybe even just pureed food, like basically baby food, for 20 years. Because she wouldn't have murdered him and hanged herself had it not just been as it was, as it appeared to be. Yeah, that's sad. That's an example of societal bullying, driving a person to do one of the worst acts, well, two of the worst acts people can countenance. So that is a shame, that is a sad story, but I don't believe they were duping anybody. We'll have another one. Oh my goodness, I can't open it. Dundee Courier, again, for the 21st of September 1905. Let's see what this one has. I'd be tempted to end on this one if it wasn't just wee short ones we'd had so far. Because it's a positive one. There's nothing negative in this report to find, so this is the kind of article we'd like to finish on. It's called Letters Inside a Cheese. When cutting up a large American cheddar cheese yesterday, the manager in Messrs Cooper & Co.'s Hawk Hill shop, Dundee, was surprised to find in the centre a small glass tube containing 2 letters. The first was from the man who made the cheese at Northfield Station, Ontario, Canada, and was dated August 2nd, 1905. The letter read, "Will you kindly let me know where this cheese was cut up? It was made in Farmer's Joy, No. 3, by Arthur S. Sievers, in the presence of a few young ladies, who would also like to know about it. If you will write, I will send you a picture of the factory and the girls." The second was written by the girls, who asked the person who found it to communicate with Odessa McBride and Ina McBride, Northfield Station, Ontario, and Edith Sievers at 117 Muckmore Street, Ottawa, Canada. The manager has accordingly written away to Mr. Sievers and his lady friends. And that's from the Dundee Courier, 21st of September 1905. And that is an upbeat story, and the kind we quite like here at Random Scottish History. It's just a shame that the news is filled with so much tragedy and awfulness that these nice wee stories make for a lovely break. We'll have another one. We'll have a final one for this episode, shall we? So, the Daily Record for the 28th of October 1905. Let's see what the Daily Record has. So this is the kind of article we would like to always finish on. but this is a lucky draw, so we get what we get. It's called The Human Wheel, newest version of Looping the Loop, the profits of professional life risking. When we witness the sensational performances of acrobats, are we attracted solely by the skill exhibited in accomplishing difficult feats? Asks the Scientific American. There is still another element of interest which inspires a feeling curiously compounded of admiration and a presentiment of danger. The public soon tire of the strongest sensation. Looping the loop, certainly, if one may judge by its numberless accidents, one of the most dangerous feats, gave place to the rotating arch, the devil's wheel, in which the cyclist spins like a squirrel. In Germany, a genius called Eclair invented an infernal wheel of another sort. It was about 25 feet in diameter, and a smaller wheel rolled around inside of it, obtaining its impetus from a plunge down an inclined plane, which made a descent of 50 feet. To this small wheel, Eclair was lashed in spread-eagle fashion. He accustoms himself to this novel mode of locomotion by having himself strapped to a similar wheel, which was turned rapidly. What is the incentive which impels these men or women to risk their lives nightly before crowds of spectators? Diavolo, who first performed the Looping the Loop feat, has become a rich man. He received £120 a night. Mademoiselle Dutrien, the human arrow, earns £16,000 a year. Imitators, of course, receive less than originators. The current pay for Looping the Loop is from £4 to £8 a night, which is not high, especially if the performer owns the apparatus, which costs at least £100. And that article is from the Daily Record for the 28th of October 1905. And, yeah, I mean, we get the appeal of daredevils. The majority, I guess, are going to turn up to see the spectacle of the achievement being done. I would think there's always going to be your percentage of spectators who are there with a different hope in mind. But, yeah, daredevils. Everyone's fans of daredevils. It's easy entertainment, isn't it? So, well, that one ends us for today. We'll maybe see you next time.